Hello. I want to do something where you see and hear me talk about dopamine and how it affects us, but then I'm going to have you read the transcript afterwards. And that way, I'm hoping you'll kind of double up, how many different modes of ways it is stored in your brain. So, first, I'm going to read you the story. So, I had a fascinating experience related to dopamine, and I'm going to share it with you here. Let me start by setting the stage. Um, some people have lived nearly all of their lives surrounded by a million easy temptations, and because those feel good and are within easy reach, they fill their days with them, rarely stopping because it feels so uncomfortable when they do. Over time, it leads to feeling empty and kind of starving for something you can't quite put your finger on. It's like a diet of cotton candy, neither satisfying nor nourishing, but you are hungry and there it is, so you keep eating it. Other people live very steady lives, and because they have been working and raising children and such, never got sucked in by the many highly available and addictive elements that characterize our society now. They're happy just, reading books and hanging out with friends and watching some TV. They don't have much experience with either big dopamine rushes or the strong need for constant little dopamine hits. Of course, there are people in between, but most of my life, I've been one of those people who had just kind of a very steady life. I have very steady amounts of dopamine. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Most of the things that I spend my time on are what I would call self-correcting in terms of the dopamine balance. I do get some kind of level, steady rushes while I'm working. Like I'll be researching something and suddenly get a great insight, or I'll be working on a lesson and come up with a great idea for making it more engaging. Sometimes there are bigger rushes, like seeing my new book in print or a great concert or something. But most of these rushes are naturally balanced by the hard work of doing them. So the seesaw stays balanced. So, for example, um, I may get a rush from some insight I have while I'm researching, but it's balanced on the other side by all the hard work of getting to that point. So, there tends to be a balance. And I gotta say, I did not realize how great that nice, steady balance feels until I lost it. Here's the story. So it was January 2023, and I'd just been featured on the National Teaching in Higher Ed podcast talking about AI in education. And suddenly I was something of a celebrity in the academic world. Not many people were talking about AI in education yet, so I was the one. My articles were being accessed at incredible rates. I was getting loads of emails asking me to come speak around the country. And I found myself doing some strange things. For example, one of my articles was posted on a site where you could see in real time how many people were reading it. The number would add up. And I found myself checking multiple times a day to see that number rising. Also, I checked my email far more frequently, and I would open it with excitement, wondering if there'd be another invitation there, and feel very let down when there wasn't. This went on for a few weeks until one day, as I was about to open my email yet again, I noticed the rush, like a little surge of chemicals. And I noticed that it felt different from other rushes in my life. And I noticed that I felt kind of weird and off balance. I don't think many people have the opportunity to feel the difference between a positive rush that will be self-balancing and the sensation of trying to constantly get the hit, the hit, the hit. I don't think I would have noticed, except that I study the brain and had been reading about dopamine. And all of a sudden, I could see it. And I thought, is this what my students are feeling like day in and day out with all the pings and the likes and the just one more reel? So I stopped in my tracks. Even though it seemed like I felt good, I realized it didn't truly feel good. I felt like I was on a hamster wheel. So I just stopped. I told myself that I would never look at that article again or any of the other types of things like that. I went back to checking my email just a few times a day. I would say I was lucky because it hadn't gone on very long and it was so clear what was happening that it wasn't too difficult to stop. Although I will say the pull, the temptation felt kind of overwhelming for a few days. Like, can I just check it once? Can I'm just going to look at that article once. Um, just a few extra times checking my email. But over a couple of weeks, it subsided. Actually, it was probably only a few days, and then it started to go down. So, how did the two types of rushes feel different? The type I was accustomed to felt lovely, and afterward, I'd go back to feeling peaceful again. I could forget to check email or look at my phone all day. There was no pull, no like this feeling of need. But with the new type of hit that I was getting, I didn't feel better afterward, but actually worse, like wanting another one immediately and feeling sort of hollow when I couldn't get it. The pull was strong and giving in was easy. Now, there's a state called flow, and when you're in it, you feel completely absorbed. Time passes and you barely notice it. And afterwards, you feel accomplished. There's research that suggests that the more frequently you experience a flow state, the higher your level of well being. Normally, I find myself in states of flow nearly every day, deeply focused on gardening or something I'm working on in my office, for example. And during that period of constantly seeking dopamine, I could never get into a flow state and my well being plummeted. Mostly, I just felt like want and need. And I couldn't see all the usual interesting things all around me. It was terrible. And I wasn't even having the satisfaction of working hard on something. So I see many of the students around me and many adults as well looking for ways to avoid putting in effort. In the study of learning, we talk about desirable difficulty. It's called desirable because when you have to work harder to learn something, it sticks better. And sometimes you should even actively make it harder on yourself on purpose so it'll stick better. But now I see a second reason why difficulty is desirable sometimes. It's that hard work pushes down the seesaw on the other side so you can feel more peace. You can have more of that level state. Um, and so you can be focused when you need to be. So you can feel content and free from that strange wanting. I never realized before that hard work was doing that for me. I thought it was just helping me like do my job better. I didn't realize that it was playing a role in like feeling peaceful and being able to focus and things like that. It's been really interesting to think about. Not many people are in a position where they can clearly see what makes the two types of rushes so different. And I'm grateful that I had that opportunity. Now I'm on the lookout. And in fact, I had another experience recently where a mini addiction crept in slowly and I didn't notice it at first. But thankfully, I did notice it eventually and shut it down. And I I know it would be harder for people who have spent years rather than weeks or months pushing on one side of the seesaw and piling up the balance there and then making it so, they're kind of constantly stuck in a kind of pain, um, lack of balance. The the dopamine fast that would be needed to fix something like that wouldn't be easy. I know that. And one would need to remain just constantly vigilant once it was under control and the seesaw was starting to stay level again. It would take a good bit of actually actively pushing down on the pain side, and that's not a lot of fun. But I do know this. There is a feeling of peace that is amazing. And that ability to seek out hard work and focus on things that you need to focus on so you can get what you want in life, man, it is such a gift. You might have a problem like mine, but not realize it yet. I didn't realize it at first either. But my goal here is to plant a seed so that if you do have a problem, one day you'll feel that strange want, that pull, that realization that you aren't as in control as you thought. And maybe you'll run some experiments to see how you feel when you stop using what Anna Lembke calls your drug of choice and see that the answer is crap, I really do feel that terrible pull. And if that happens, I've got your back. That's what we're working on here. So that should you reach the point where you want to make a change, maybe it's a point where you feel like the anxiety or other negative feelings are just more than you want to have to live with. Um, I want you to know ways that you can do something about it. And that's what we're going to be looking at. I will see you later.